Hello and welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Daryl Stranger. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau officially called a federal election earlier this week. Trudeau went to Rideau Hall Sunday to ask newly installed Governor-General Mary Simon to dissolve Parliament, which triggers Elections Canada to issue writs to the nation's 338 federal ridings. Here's that story. It's something that many thought was not a matter of if, but a matter of when. Canadians will go to the polls September the 20th following a 36-day campaign. Now, voters will go to the polls in the midst of a deadly fourth wave of the Delta variant and forest fires that are scorching communities in BC, Manitoba, and Ontario.
We've had your back, and now it's time to hear your voice. The decisions your government makes right now will define the future your kids and grandkids grow up in. So in this pivotal, consequential moment, who wouldn't want a say? Who wouldn't want their chance to help decide where our country goes from here?
Now, after winning a majority government in 2015, the Liberals were reduced to a minority government in 2019 after only winning 155 of the 338 seats. Now, while a Prime Minister can call an election at any time, Trudeau could have waited until mid-2023 before sending voters to the polls, according to Canada's election laws. Now, as of Sunday, there have been more than 600 funding announcements for every province and territory covering a range of topics. Now, for Indigenous communities in the 2021 budget alone, the Liberals pledged to spend more than $18 billion on basic necessities, water, infrastructure, and essential services in the communities. Now, Trudeau has failed to live up to a key promise in the run-up to the 2015 election, and that is to end boil water advisories in First Nations communities. Some have been under boil water or do not consume warnings for decades.
I think people who disagree with this government or disagree with this direction should have an opportunity to make themselves heard. And that's what this election is all about. It's allowing Canadians to weigh in. It's allowing Canadians to be heard.
While unavailable for comment, Indigenous leaders across the country said they would speak on the election in the coming days and weeks, including APTN National Chief Roseanne Archibald and ITK President Nathan Obed. MMF President David Chartrand did provide the following statement. While we believe that Justin Trudeau's government has developed the strongest relationship with the Indigenous community in Canadian history, we are willing to work with any party that wins the election. This election will have a number of key issues at play, including the climate crisis, and we will have more election coverage for you in the coming weeks as Election Day draws nearer. Now, for more election reaction, we go to Michelle Carlenze.
Canadians found out over the weekend that a federal election will be held on September 20th. They've now had a day to sit with the news, so we thought, what better time to hit the streets and ask people what they thought. Some people said it was too early for an election, considering the pandemic. Others said they're ready. Here's what people in Winnipeg had to say.
I have to say that I agree with those who feel that it is an inappropriate time for a federal election to be called.
I'm not against it per se. I hope it's done safely, given the circumstance.
I think it is a weird time, especially since we're trying to recuperate from COVID. I don't think it's the right time. I don't think it's necessary. Right now, we're dealing with a lot of stuff as First Nations people.
It seems like it's like a power play in order to get them to get a majority. But I feel like that was pretty clear, and I think regardless of who was in power, they would have done it anyways.
It wasn't totally necessary, but I'm okay with it because I think it's a good idea to get the people as a whole viewpoint, you know.
In southwestern Nova Scotia, a Migmaw chief was arrested and detained by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans minutes after launching a treaty rights fishery. Angel Moore brings us this story.
I'm here at Saunierville Wharf, where Chief Mike Sack of Sipekne'katik First Nation launched the community's treaties right fishery. But it has not been approved by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Sack says people are being harassed.
A lot of resistance from the industry, putting, blockades in front of everything, so it's hard for us that way.
As the boats left the wharf, fisheries officers arrested Sack. He was detained at the DFO office in Meteghan. Sack says he was arrested for launching a treaties right fishery.
Politically, they can show that they're trying to stop the fishery, they're making their arrest, and for me, it's very alarming that our people are out there. It's almost like a sideshow. They did that, and at the same time, they're in the water pulling their traps from our people, so it's just a disgraceful thing.
As the Migmaw fishers dropped their lobster traps, they were surrounded by DFO and fisheries officers hauled out the traps. Lobster harvester Jordan Alexander says he will keep fishing.
We're exercising our rights, like we're allowed to do this, it's an inherent right, and they can't take that from us basically.
SAC says no charges were laid, and DFO did confirm an individual was charged for allegedly violating the Fishers Act. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Sauniaville Wharf.
Arrests of logging protesters near Fairy Creek continued this week, and the protesters are worried that someone may get fatally injured. Confrontations between RCMP and protesters are on the rise. The RCMP said 49 people were arrested in Fairy Creek earlier in the week, bringing the number of arrests to nearly 700. A court injunction was issued in May allowing logging company Teal Jones to operate in the area. The company hasn't logged there since June, but protesters have remained. They want no old growth logging in the province. Rainbow Ice has spent 3 months protesting. She says there is worry about violent arrests.
So it's getting so incredibly brutal and unfair. There are people on the ground who are beginning to talk about what to do if somebody is fatally injured. Like, it's just not okay that the RCMP are working with industry.
An Edmonton elder says she was injured in a confrontation outside of a Roman Catholic church. She told APTN that she wanted to attend a service to hear an apology from a priest, but faced violence instead. APTN's Tamara Pimentel has this story.
In this video, Elder Taz Augustine is being shoved out of Our Lady Queen of Poland Catholic Church in Edmonton. Augustine says she was part of a group of 6 who tried to enter the church to hear a public apology.
When we started to walk into the church, we had no intention of being violent at all. You know, we had the smudge with us, and we said, we'll go in, we'll listen to the apology. Unfortunately, that's not what happened.
The apology follows comments Reverend Marcin Moroniuk made in July. A video was posted online of Moroniuk saying news of unmarked graves at residential school sites is a lie. The Catholic Archdiocese of Edmonton said in a news release the video was removed. The Reverend has been placed on indefinite administrative leave, and an apology from Reverend Moroniuk will be read in conjunction with the August 14th and 15 Masses. That's when Augustine decided to attend.
The apology we received was to be thrown against the wall and to be manhandled.
One of the men in the video says the residential school system is the fault of the Canadian government.
It's horrible, it's heartbreaking. It wasn't right, but again, why are these people here expressing their hatred and anger on us? What have we done?
On August 13th, the Reverend wrote an apology that stated, "I apologize to the residential school survivors and pledged to do better," adding he would engage in educating himself on the issue.
Now, had he been really wanting to be educated, well, we were there at the church, willing to educate.
APTN has reached out to the church for comment. We have not yet received a response. Augustine says she has some bruising from the incident on both arms and is experiencing some aching, but will continue to educate the public.
It's a physical pain that will heal. You know, it's and our intergenerational emotional pain, that's going to take a few more generations to heal.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
A new organization was launched this week to help survivors of federal Indian day schools. Called the McLean Day Schools Settlement Corporation, it's part of a settlement to a class action lawsuit. The corporation's board members were named James Igliorte, Claudette Commanda, and Chief Roger Augustine. In 2019, Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett announced a $1.47 billion settlement. $200 million was set aside for a legacy fund, and the McLean Corporation will implement and administer that fund. It's named after the lead plaintiff in that suit, Gary McLean, who sadly passed away shortly before Bennett's announcement. McLean's daughter remembered his outlook on life.
The experiences he endured, survived, and spent his life working through were used as tools to create connections and support. He thought there's nothing that can't be talked about. You may not be in agreement, but instead of getting angry or upset, talk to the person or someone you trust. Have faith the situation can be worked out. He felt it wasn't his job to bring you down, but to try to lift you up in whatever you are facing or dealing with.
All right, we have to take a short break, but still ahead, Nunavuts child and youth advocate is ringing an alarm bell over sex crimes against youth. Welcome back. Nunavut has Canada's youngest population. It also has a rate of sex crimes against youth 10 times the national average. Nunavut's child and youth advocate is ringing an alarm bell, saying not enough is being done to address that statistic. Kent Driscoll has this from Iqaluit.
Back in June, Nunavut's child and youth advocate told MLAs that child sex abuse in Nunavut is a crisis that the government can't even really measure because of poor tracking. Jane Bates tells us why.
Family Services is the primary department who protects children, basically, responds to child abuse and neglect, and what they primarily are not tracking are referrals. So what that means is someone calls to the department and says, I'm concerned that a child may be in need of protection or a family needs assistance. They're not tracking every referral coming in.
Why is that important? It's hard to figure out a solution when you don't know how big the problem is.
When you're not doing that, what's happening is you can't say, I received 50 referrals regarding child sexual abuse. I received 30 referrals on physical abuse, or we're doing 100 referrals for just supporting families and getting help. So that was one of the, we were quite surprised to find out that they hadn't been tracking that accurately, because again, it informs your business.
There's a word they use in government, siloing, when different parts of the government don't communicate with other parts. In this case, it isn't just Family Services not tracking cases. Many government agencies deal with youth.
One of the recommendations of Our Minds Matter and previously of Standing Committee was to develop an interagency protocol for information sharing and coordination of services. And that's a recommendation that's kind of outstanding and that we're monitoring. And that would really govern and help assist departments working together.
The Territorial Assembly comes back for their final session in September. Then there's an election in October. Recommendations will be made in September, but it will be up to a new government to make sure they're followed up on. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
BC First Nation leaders are calling on the federal and provincial governments to end fossil fuel subsidies and take action on climate change, following a United Nations Code Red report warning of human-caused greenhouse gases. The First Nations Leadership Council demanded immediate climate action in light of recent heat waves and the current massive, raging wildfires threatening communities. As a first step, they called on the governments to stop fossil fuel industry subsidies and commit to aggressively reduce carbon emissions.
We're putting the word out that we need to add emphasis to decarbonizing our economy, meaning moving away from the billions of dollars that get invested in oil and gas exploration and development by government.
At the wharf in southwestern Nova Scotia, where the Migmaw Treaty Fishery is based, tensions were raised after someone removed an Acadian flag. It could have been an issue that led to bad feelings in the Acadian community. Instead, as Angel Moore reports, it did not end up that way.
Your flag is back up. My deepest apologies to the locals here in Clare.
That's Levi Paul, a Sebago-Nagadie First Nation lobster harvester. He and his crew replaced the Acadian flag the day after someone cut it down. Paul said people complained.
We went to go pick up some bait and talked to a few of my older friends from Clare community here, and they were pretty upset about their flag being cut down.
Sebago-Nagadie lobster harvesters have been fishing and living in this area for generations, alongside the Acadian community. Paul said removing the flag was disrespectful.
And it really, really touched home with me because, like I just said, I have a lot of friends in this community that are seniors, and that was like a stake driven right through their hearts.
The treaty fishery launched this week, a Mikmaw right the feds do not recognize and the commercial fishermen say is illegal. But Paul says the people in the area are supportive.
Because these people put their flag up to show us that they're here supporting us. They didn't put their flag up here to say that they own this all. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and this is something that our people need to recognize, because it's not really the Acadian people, right?
Paul hopes replacing the flag will help build stronger relationships with the Acadians.
And we chipped in and went and bought the flag. We smudged and blessed it, and we put it back up for you guys in respect. Yes.
The Migma and the Acadian flags once again fly together as the Migma assert their treaty right. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabukduk, also known as Halifax.
We need to step aside for one final break, but stick around. Indigenous artists are reclaiming space in the Northwest Territories. Find out how next. Welcome back. Women wanting to work in skilled trades from 4 First Nations in Manitoba will be part of a new government-funded training program. Michelle Karlenzig has more on how the program is helping women break gender gaps in the construction sector.
Yesterday, the province of Manitoba announced $600,000 towards skilled trades for Indigenous women. The program is partnering with the Manitoba Construction Sector Council in hopes to create jobs and prosperity.
Contractors immediately see the benefit of women in their workforce, and unfortunately, like I just said, we cannot find enough women to fill vacant positions. This project will aid in solving this problem.
19-year-old Sietta Marsden started taking a liking to carpentry at an early age and began the program in Pinemutang First Nation this month.
It's a very cool course, and the women too are also very supportive.
The programs will run in 4 communities across Manitoba, including Pinemutang, Pimachikamak Cree Nation, Dakota Teepee Nation, and York Landing. Marsden says the program has helped her overcome gender barriers.
You don't see a lot of women in trades, so it is intimidating, but I think just, ignoring that fact and just going out there and doing what you do would definitely make a change in your perspective.
Economic Development Minister John Rise says 8,000 trade workers are expected to retire this year, and there aren't currently enough skilled workers to replace them. Marsden says it's time to start empowering young women in skilled trades.
We need women in there to let, the youth. We need women in there to show the younger generation that it's okay, that I did it, you can do it. I will be your role model.
According to the Manitoba Construction Sector Council, women make up just 3.4% of the construction industry. Michelle Karlenzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Indigenous artists are reclaiming space in the Northwest Territories with a week's worth of celebrations. Our Charlotte Warren-Jacobs hears from those promoting art as a way of building a stronger and healthier Yellowknife.
And we were trying to think of what represents a strong, healthy women. And I remember I was just imagining my grandma, my mom, and my ancestors and what the women have been doing.
With every brushstroke, 21 Indigenous artists and countless community members are reclaiming space. Nonprofit organization Strong People, Stronger Communities has been working the past year to bring the week-long mural festival to life. For artists like Kyla Lesage, it's been a rewarding experience.
Being able to reconnect with the land has brought me to this mural, and I wouldn't be in this mural team, I feel like, without my reconnecting to the land and my family and the traditions. But as we're painting there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is soothing. Like, I can listen to other people talk. I hear the babies. The babies are coming and painting. And I'm standing there like, I'm not crying. Like, how do I hold this in?
The Strong, Healthy Women's mural is one of 6, soon to be hung throughout Sambake, Yellowknife.
And so I thought back and I was like, oh, we got to bring in and break down gender roles and really hold up our women and really show the leaders and the caregivers and the nurturers that we have in our communities. And so we really wanted to incorporate, like, women are going to be out there chopping wood, they're going to be setting fire, they're going to be putting up their own wall tents, they're going to be hunting caribou, and so you can see caribou in there.
This is Melanie Jewell's first mural.
We didn't plan out colors, so it's just all been like on the spot today. Since going to art school, it's been like, you know, this isn't good enough. You know, if you're like doing art critiques, and there's always going to be someone pointing out like, this is good, but this isn't good. So I'm also trying to get away from that. So it's been really hard to unlearn that as well.
The festival also includes young Indigenous artists for mentorship, like 18-year-old Lexus McDonald from Inuvik.
There's like a lot of like self-discovery and like just learning about like the Two-Spirit itself. I plan on bringing a lot of that kind of knowledge back as well, and like finding my place in the community. So I'm very excited to go home with all this like new knowledge and experience.
Leanne Charlie has been part of many mural projects and sees the payoffs firsthand.
It started with the 3 of us in the middle of a pandemic in the dark, basically on Zoom, talking about Indigenous, like the strength and health of Indigenous women, to then meeting and knowing that other teams are doing this too, and then we get to all be together, and then other people are coming to the venue and they get to contribute and be part of it. And then the other people walking to work past the mural who will see themselves.
Organizers say they are securing locations for the 6 murals to be hung this fall. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Journalist and award-winning writer Tanyas has been signed by HarperCollins Canada to write 3 new books. They will be nonfiction about residential schools, with the first one scheduled to be released in 2023. It will focus on the discovery of unmarked graves at these sites and how that discovery resonated with Canadians and the rest of the world. Talega said that every Indigenous family in Canada has been touched by the trauma of the schools, and it's time that children are honored and their voices heard. I'm sure many people will be wanting to get those books once they are released. That's all we have for you this time around on APTN National News Weekend. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend.